Francis?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining AARP New Hampshire's sponsored program with the Creative Feast, Eat Your Weeds with Liz Barber. My name is Frances Donahue, and I am your host and a volunteer with AARP New Hampshire. AARP has been promoting the health and well-being of older Americans for over 60 years. Here in New Hampshire, we strive to bring you informative, innovative, and fun virtual events like today's online cook-along demonstration as a means of connection and inclusion. Today's event is a part of a series with the Creative Feast, focusing on food and its impact on healthy living. AARP also has numerous free healthy living resources on its website, from staying fit to wellness and longevity, information on healthy eating, as well as staying sharp. There's something for everyone. I'll put that link in the chat. If you have any questions or comments during this session about AARP New Hampshire or the cooking demonstration, please put them in the chat section and our wonderful volunteer Kathy will raise them to Liz. So today, Liz will be showing us recipes using backyard weeds. Chef Liz of Hollis, New Hampshire, built her cooking career in a variety of Boston's catering and restaurant settings. After starting her family, she re-entered the food world as a cooking instructor with Liz Barber's Creative Feast. Her recipes and teaching style connected with her community, and Liz soon had a large following of loyal students. Liz is a regular guest on New Hampshire's WMUR Cook's Corner, and her cooking demonstrations and recipes are featured in various publications, including Where Women Cook, New Hampshire Magazine, the Nashua Telegraph, and the Hippo Press. All her programs focus on the premise that we are healthier when we cook at home. We hope you enjoy the program. Liz, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining me here with AARP New Hampshire. I'm really excited to share this program with you today. We are going to start with a slide presentation. I'm going to share some information with you about foraging for weeds in your home garden. And then when that's done, I'm going to take you quickly to my website so you can see where you can find the recipes. Some of you will be cooking along. Just be prepared. We're going to start with the soup recipe first, and then we'll do the salad recipe. So let's get started. I'm going to go through my slide presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. And we are talking about eating your weeds, and I love this program because it really kind of helps people to understand that plants that we call weeds today were not necessarily called weeds, just 50, 60, 70 years ago. In fact, a lot of these plants that we call weeds, the reason we call weeds is because they're inconvenient to a landscape that we're designing, not necessarily that they're bad for you. In fact, most weeds that we have that are edible are actually highly nutritious. So we'll go through that, and then of course we'll be using some of these quote unquote weeds in the cooking demonstration. So let's talk first, what is a weed? A weed is a plant growing where it's not wanted. That's it. So if you happen to have a landscape that allows these weeds, they're no longer weeds. So how would I define that? So for example, in my lawn, my husband and I do not use weed killers, nor do we use pesticides. So if clover grows in our lawn, it's green and it can stay with the grass. If dandelions grow in the lawn, they're green, they can stay in the grass. So that's how we, work with the weeds that often are, pest issues. So historically, weeds are invasive plants. Today, their undesirability in looks or invasive in habit, and that's how they define them. Now, I do have weeds that grow in my gardens. I have these awful grasses that grow, witchgrass and crabgrass, and oftentimes these weeds that I'm using in my demonstration, they're growing in the wrong place. So I will harvest those. Those that are edible, I may use them in a salad or in a bouquet if I want. Others I will actually just give to my chickens and they'll take care of that issue, or I'll put them into my compost. So what are the benefits of eating weeds? This is really important to understand. Many weeds are packed with nutrition, vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Many weeds have medicinal benefits, and they can be used in teas. So brewing them will help to bring out their medicinal properties, poultices, oils, syrups, extracts, and ointments. Now, over the past, 7,500 years, we have moved away from these natural healing products that were often made in the home or at a local pharmacy, using these materials because they have really great healing properties. So if you are someone who understands herbals, or you want to understand herbals and how they work, you may find that a lot of these weeds that I'm going to be sharing with you today are actually beneficial for ointments for cuts and sores and inflammation, and maybe the teas will help with respiratory issues or digestive issues. So these are all things that herbalists understand. We've kind of lost touch with these, and in my household, I'm trying to bring them back. Foraging for weeds is a chemical-free way of containing weeds and keeping them from spreading and overwhelming your garden. So in other words, if you are in my garden, as I mentioned, I do not use pesticides, and I am very careful about the fertilizers I use to make sure that they're only for edible plants or natural fertilizers, so that I can be foraging for these weeds in my garden, and that will help to keep the weed population down, but also add that nutrient benefit. So very briefly, I just want to show you my edible gardens, just so you can take a peek. This is my house here in Hollis, New Hampshire. It is one of the oldest houses in the historic village. And so my husband and I have worked to really minimize lawn and to really increase my planting space. It's only a third of an acre, and I have, smaller parts. I break up the garden into smaller parts so that I can create gardens that are manageable for me. I don't hire anybody to do this, and it's been a lot of fun. And I learn every day as I go along the way. So this is the front of the house, and then this is the side and the back. So just to give you an idea, this is you can see that the street is actually surrounds the house, but plenty of opportunity for weeds to grow and to spread. This over here on the right hand side, this is my small herb garden that I've planted right outside my kitchen, right outside the porch. And so every garden does have edibles in it. And I'm always, trying to use those edibles in different ways, and you'll see some of that today. So let's talk a little bit about edible weeds. I'm going to give you some examples. You may find these, in your own garden. So burdock is, you may recognize this as a thistle. These are those thistles, the burrs that stick to your legs when you walk through the garden or you go out in the back. And some, these burrs that get stuck to you, this is burdock. The leaves tend to be on the bitter side, but they have very earthy flavored roots. So you can eat the young leaves, the stalk, and the roots. Generally, the roots you would eat at the end of the season. If you're going to eat a plant's roots, you wait until the end of the season. That way they'll have had all season long to pull the nutrients out of the soil and, of course, to grow. Generally, when you're eating your weeds, the younger the weed, the milder the flavor. So that's why it says here to eat the young leaves. They're less bitter than the leaves that have been around, for weeks and months. So that is burdock. And then go on to our next. Chickweed. This is one that I find all over my garden. It's very pleasant and mild. and sweet tasting. Again, the younger the plant is, the sweeter the taste, or the milder the taste. The edible parts are the tender leaves and the stems. I almost consider these almost like a salad green, so I love to put them in salads. If you're going to make like a tuna fish sandwich, and instead of using microgreens, this chickweed would be a really nice substitute for that. So take a look out at your chickweed and give it a taste. Clover. Clover is a beautiful little flower, comes in a lot of different colors. The flowers are sweet and the leaves are mild. And we often find these, you'll have a honey clover honey. So what is that? Well, that's when the bees have collected all of their pollen from the clover in the early part of the spring, because that's generally when clover is in bloom. And then, so those people who are processing honey will then take it from them after the clover has gone by, and that's how they can call it that clover honey. These clovers, this really pretty pink is more common. I see it by the roadside often. This red clover or crimson clover is one that our local farmers plant regularly as a cover crop because of the nutrient value, the high nutrient value of the plant itself. So once those flowers bloom, then their bees get at it. Then once the flowers are gone, then they till this underneath the soil, and it makes its own type of fertilizer. So it's a really wonderful plant to have around. Dandelion, I know we all hate dandelion in the lawn. I have grown to love dandelion. The flowers are sweet. The leaves are a little bit peppery, and you can also eat the roots. I will say that if you're going to harvest the leaves, the best time to do them, again, is when they're young. A lot of people will do it right before the flowers bloom. I did make a dandelion apple cider vinegar that I'm going to be using today. I harvested from my local apple orchard. They had dandelions growing everywhere. So I contacted the farmer and I asked, have you guys sprayed yet for your apples? And they said, no, we haven't done that yet. And I asked, could I go and harvest these dandelions? And they said, absolutely, we don't want them. So I harvested all these, a whole bag of dandelion flowers. I couldn't get over the scent. So don't overlook your dandelions. The nutrient value is huge in dandelions. And these are also a wonderful astringent. So, if you're looking for high value green, they are free right outside your back door. This is called hairy bittercress, and it has a mild flavor. Again, you see these in little, they almost spread out like rosettes, and I see them all over the garden. Again, you would look at them and say they're weeds, but they're quite lovely, quite petite. And these, I'll pull them up, get rid of the roots, wash them, and again, use them on salads or use them in sandwiches and things like that. And they're really quite nice. So another free green that you can have right outside your door. Garlic mustard, I've got two mustards for you. This garlic mustard is a spicy horseradish flavor, but please note it is invasive. Don't ever bring this plant into your house. I find it along the quieter roadsides here in my hometown. I know people aren't spraying there, so I will cut them from the top, and I'll use the greens. You can actually saute those, add them in with stir fries. You could do the roots, the seeds, the stems. I just caution you, do not bring this plant into your home into your garden as something to grow. Make sure you consume it, and then any leftovers I just put in the trash. So because it is highly invasive. Now, this is a wild mustard, and I actually have some of this for you today. I just found this right outside my chicken run. It's growing wild. It's beautiful. And those flowers are very much like the flowers of broccoli when they go to flower. And of course, you have a spicy, peppery taste to the leaves. So they're a wonderful addition to a salad. And you can use the flower buds. We're going to use those to garnish. You could do the seed pods if you want, and the seeds. Some people will dry them and they'll use them in a seed mix. But these are beautiful, and I was so excited to, for the first time, really discover them on my own property. These are not the invasive mustard, this wild mustard. The garlic mustard and if you look at the difference, you can see this white flower, this tall, grows very tall and single stemmed. This is much more open and has a yellow flower. Lamb's quarters, another one of those very common weeds that people see around their property a lot. But these are sweet like cabbage. Again, get them when the plant is young. This is the key to having that milder flavor. But the nutrient value is high. So go ahead and use this in your salads, or if you're making a soup like we are today, they're just part of that green. If you're making pestos, you can add things like this to your pestos and they'll add a really interesting flavor to them. So go ahead and harvest these. And again, if I'm weeding though, and I'm getting rid of a lot of things, I'll give them to my chickens, and that adds a lot of excellent nutrients and helps to make their egg yolks really orangey. So it's really wonderful for them. Now, plantain, this is one I find often that grows along my driveway. I happened to go out for a walk this morning. We have a lot of conservation land here in Hollis. And at one of the main parking lots, way off on the edge on their own, I found so many of these plantain. Now, plantain, again, highly nutritious. You can use it in the place of spinach. If you're sauteing it, it's really good for you. But medicinally, plantain is one of the best values for it helps with minor abrasions and cuts and things like that. And it's so simple to use. All you have to do is take one of these leaves and kind of chew it up in your mouth, put it onto your cut or your sore, wrap, wrapping around it and leave it, and it will help to heal remarkably. So I collected a whole bunch of these leaves, and I am going to dry them so that I can then use them throughout the winter, reconstitute them and use them. So that's something I'm learning about. But plantain is one of those great medicinal herbs, but also edible in the place of spinach or something if you're going to saute. Now, pineapple weed is one of my favorites, and I remember this as a kid. So over on the right-hand side is the pineapple weed. Now, you'll find this again along pathways, driveways. I found a whole bunch along the sidewalk as I was coming home from my walk. Take one of these, take a bite. They're awfully sweet. They smell so good, and they're very similar to chamomile, which is why I put the two of them together. You don't need to spread seeds for these. They'll all of a sudden start popping up, but you can kind of use them in the place. If you're going to make a tea, you can use the pineapple weed and make a tea, and it has that chamomile essence to it. But this pineapple weed is what we call a weed, but I have to say it is quite delicious. So don't be afraid to use that. Purple dead nettle, these are astringent. These are growing everywhere in my garden. Somehow they must have come in with a plant that I had bought at a local garden club sale. So do be cautious when you bring those home. They're wonderful opportunities to share plants, but go through those plants and see, make sure that you're not bringing in an invasive plant onto your property. So the purple dead nettle is invasive in that it's a great ground cover. It will take over everything. And if you're prepared for that, this is the plant for you. But I do love the color and of course the flowers, and you can eat them. Again, stick with them when they're young, because as they age, they tend to get a little bit almost soft and hairy. but these the leaves are in salads, pesto soups. The flowers are a great garnish, and they are a wonderful medicinal, anti-inflammatory, antihistamine, laxative tea. So you can check that out. But 2 different types of purple dead nettle. This is actually the one over on the right. A lot of people call it creeping Charlie. Either one you can use, and my chickens love them both. So that's really nice for us.
Liz, somebody did ask about whether that leaves or stems or roots would be the thing to use, starting back around the plantains, which I think is probably, you've been putting it on the slideshow, but I think people wanted a little bit more information.
Yeah, so the plantain, the leaves in particular are what you want to be using. I'm not an herbalist, so I don't have all the definitive answers on that, but it is the plantain. Certainly there is a nice stalk that comes up with seeds, and you can dry those seeds if you want. It would be a lot of work, but you could add them to any kind of a seed mixture that you might be eating. But most often what I have been seeing is that the leaves are really the part of the plant that you want to be using.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Now, yep. And so did you have another question?
No,
okay.
Thank you. Just keep going.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is purslane. Now this is one of those weeds. It's a ground cover. It's a real, looks like a succulent. It's very hardy, and it is delicious. I love to use it in salads. It's a very lemony, sour kind of flavor, and a little bit peppery. But I've often seen this in books, recipe books, where they actually saute this, which is a nice, almost watercress kind of flavor to it. So the edible parts of the leaves, stems, and the seeds on this. So mine is just starting to make an appearance in the garden. You can eat it raw. You could saute it. Again, a lot of really great nutrients. You don't have to go to the grocery store to fill up your plate with, good, healthy greens when you have a garden that's full of stuff like this. So do look for the purslane. I think you're going to like that. And of course, there are violets. We all love violets. We often think of just the flowers, but we have the leaves. I'm going to be using those in my salad. They have a mild, sweet lettuce-like flavor to them. So go ahead and gather those. You can gather them both. You don't have to take it out from the roots. Just cut them right up from the top, and you can have the leaves, and then you'll have more and more growing from the roots. So, I love violets in my garden, as long as they're in the right place. When I'm trying to plant vegetables and things, I may remove them, but I do love to see them in other parts of the garden. And then I know I'm going to have salad greens throughout the entire summer, free of charge. So this is really, really nice to consider. I also like to point out that the best time for you to collect any of these greens that you're going to be using for cooking or in salads or anything, do collect these things in the early morning, because that way they haven't been hit by the hot sun, they're not wilting. And then I just wash them and dry them like I would lettuce, keep them in the refrigerator to keep them nice and crisp, and they'll stay for several days, as long as they're dry when you pop them into the refrigerator. So let's just talk about a few recipes that you can use your weeds in. This is a souffle, which we had done in one of my cooking classes. I've done a souffle recently, and so I use a lot of flowers and edible weeds in my souffles in place of spinach. It's a really wonderful way to use them. Soups and salads, feel free to do that. We're going to do one of each today. Pestos and seasoned oils, so you can chop up your herbs and these edibles and make them into wonderful pestos. And just use those as your green, and then follow your recipe as you have it. And then syrups and teas. So violet over here on the left, it's a violet flower syrup. In the center, this is a tea made with those lovely little pineapple herb that similar to chamomile. And then of course you can dry these and then you can use them for teas as well. And then you can use a lot of these that I've mentioned to you for healing creams, infusions, and tonics. Again, I'm not an herbalist, so I don't have, I'm just learning this craft. But there are a lot of places on the internet that you can go to where you can make your own salves, your own creams using edible flowers that are very nutritious, using some of these weeds, and they have those wonderful healing properties. So that is the end of our slide presentation. But what I'd like to do is I'm just going to switch my camera here. So give me 1 second, and then I'm going to, there we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and share with you my website because I want to show you where you'll find these recipes. So let me go right here. And here, go to thecreativefeast.com. You can check out my events calendar by clicking on the calendar. Of course, go to AARP. We have programs going all the way, scheduled all the way through December. I'm going to be working on the last 3 months and we'll get those up. But for your recipes, I've tried to make it real easy for you. If you come to where it says Food and Fun and Recipe Blog, if you look over to the right, you'll see AARP 2023 Cook Along classes. So when you click on that, as you scroll down, you'll see all of the classes that I have done previously in 2023 with the recipes there right for you. And here we are at Eat Your Weeds. We're going to be doing our foragers salad and our foragers soup. So you just click on those and those will pop up, and you can certainly print them out if you like, or you can always come back and revisit. So those are there for your convenience. But I do want to get us started on cooking. So let's go ahead and if you want, you can look at the, let's see, on the gallery view, it should just be my 3 cameras. If we have all the other, I think we should be all set with that. And we're going to go ahead and let me just make a quick adjustment here to make sure that you can see that okay. There we go. All right, everybody. So as you can see, I've got a nice display here of weeds that I gathered from my garden and from my walk this morning that I'm going to share with you today. This is a plate full of weeds that I'm going to be sharing with you when we go to make our salad, and the same with our flowers and weeds here. I am going to take one of these herbs out because we're going to be using that in our soup, but everything else is going to be here. So I'm just going to put these off to the side to grab a little bit later when it comes time to make the salad. For our soup today, we're going to start with our onions and our potato. I'm going to be using water instead of a broth. You can certainly be using a chicken broth or a vegetable broth stock if you have it. I'm going to put my milk and my cream to the side, and I've got my butter. So these ingredients I'm just going to put off to the side. We're going to prep our starting vegetables for our soup. And first thing first is we're going to use our onion. I'm just going to, this outside part of the onion is a little bit papery, so I'm going to get that off. And the first thing we're going to do is chop that up. So I'm just cutting my onion in half from top to bottom, and then I'm going to go ahead and peel it. We're going to do our first step, which is a classic step that you would do for any of your recipes that you're sauteing. To start, when I make the soup, I like to cook my onions first. It helps to release the sweetness of the onion and add some good flavor, and it also softens up the onion for me. Now this soup recipe is goes pretty quickly because I'm going to chop my ingredients small. Now that's a little tip for you. If you want to speed up the cooking of your recipe, cut your ingredients small. So we've got our onion cut in half. I've got it on the flat side of the onion. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the stem and leave the root, okay? Because the root is going to hold the onion together when I go ahead and give this a nice dice. So I'm going to take the tip of my knife and cut down to the root without going through. Again, the smaller I cut the onion, the quicker this is going to cook. Now, today's soup recipe can be, and now I'm going to go ahead and turn it to the side, and I'm going to cut across, and I have a nice dice. The recipe can be pureed, or you can serve it, with the without the puree. Depends on how you like to serve it. I like to have a chunkier soup, so I may not puree today. I went ahead and I bought some salmon cubes that I'm going to add to my soup, just to show you how you can then take your soup into another direction, add some protein to it if you want in the cooking process, and then it will come out and be more of a meal than just a soup on the side. Now, let me just grab a little bowl here, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my chopped onion in there. All right. And we'll go ahead over to the stove. I'm gonna go ahead and get this sauteed up. I am using butter. I love butter in the flavor of the soup, but if you'd rather use olive oil, feel free to do that. We want to use a good, healthy oil. So we're going to go over to our stove here, lift our lid off, and go ahead, and I'm going to put this over a moderate flame, and I'm going to add my butter in. That butter is going to melt, and then it's going to start cooking my onions over that moderate flame. We don't want our onions to brown. We just want them to soften up because that will help keep this sweet. The browning will give it more of a sharper flavor, and we don't want to burn our onions because that will then, be more of it's almost like overcooking sugar. You know how you burn sugar, it caramelizes too much and then it gets bitter. So we don't want to do that. Now, I'm using a potato in this partly because it's going to add some body, but also it's a great way to help a soup like this kind of to thicken up in the puree. If you'd rather not have potato, you do not have to put it in. You can up your greens if you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and use this potato. I love to cook with the Yukon Gold potatoes because I find them to be almost that buttery flavor, almost a sweet flavor. But if you prefer you could use a baking potato, just peel it, and then it would be a very starchy finish to it. So that's something else that you can be considering. So what I'm going to do here, again, just like my onion, is I'm going to cut my potato in half. That creates that nice flat surface for the potato. And then I'm going to cut this into cubes. So I'm just going to cut this into, probably about 1/2 inch slice. And you can see that I've cut them all the way through. And then just like my onion, I turn them into the other direction, and I can cut across. And now I have my potatoes very easily diced. Okay, so that's what I'm looking to do here. And I'm going to pop those into my bowl, and I'm going to do my other half of the potato and then cut across. All right, and again, the smaller the slice, the smaller the pieces, the faster they're going to cook. Now, potatoes typically take about, at this size, maybe 10 minutes to cook. So we've got a really good timing going so far. So let's go back over to the stove. You can see that my butter is cooking up my onions. I'm going to lower my heat a little bit because I was going just a little bit too fast for me. All right, I don't want them to brown. I really just want them to soften up. I'm going to go ahead and throw my potatoes right in there. They're going to cook right up with my onions. And if you want that to speed up even more, you can cover that, and that will help essentially trap the steam inside and help to make those onions and the potato cook up just a little bit faster. Okay, now I'm just going to remember I told you I'm going to be adding some salmon to this. So I did I'm going to make this more of a meal. Again, I'm just showing this to you as an option. You don't have to use salmon. You could use raw shrimp. You could use chunks of broad or haddock. You could use scallops if you like. Scallops are so expensive now. But I just went ahead and got some chunks of some salmon, and I'm just gonna cut those up just a little bit smaller so that they cook a little bit more evenly. You could also use in here if you wanted to, you know, other vegetables. But I like to keep it just as simple as possible. So I'm just going to cut these pieces up. I went to the fish counter and they had some diced pieces of salmon that was a lot less expensive than a salmon fillet. And so I thought, oh, I'll just go with that. So for $6.99 a pound, I got some really nice pieces of salmon here that I'm essentially going to, you know, add to the cooked soup to just let that cook through. So let's just pop that back in there. I just wanted to show you, I just cut them into bite-sized pieces. So this is going to make a really delicious dinner for us. All right, just rinse off my hands and then we'll get back in business. Gonna grab a towel here and let's go ahead and chop up our herbs. Now, herbs are going to be a really important part of this soup because it's really going to help to give you all of that wonderful flavor. Now, you can use any of your favorite herbs. I suggested tarragon. I love the flavor of tarragon in a cream soup. So that's what I'm going to use. It is a little bit on the licoricey side. You could also add in parsley if you want. I'm going to add in a little bit of basil. Both tarragon and basil have that almost licoricey flavor to them. If you want to use a dried herb, I would suggest I've used dried tarragon and it's been wonderful. So once you've got your broth in there and your milk and your cream, then you can add your dried tarragon and that will help to wake up the flavor.
That's very nice. Liz, somebody asked a question. If you use the baked potato in the soup, would you peel it or would you use the peels in the soup?
Yes, no, you want to peel that. I did not peel my my Yukon Gold potato because the peel is so thin that it's not a problem. But a baked potato, certainly that peel would be very thick. And so yes, I would peel that. And if you are prepping your soup ahead of time, you know, you can cut your potatoes ahead of time, just immerse them in water so that the water covers them and it'll keep them from turning color on you. So I'm going to add my herbs right here. And you know, the herb part of this soup, it could be any herb. If you, again, you could use parsley, you could use dill, you could use, if you want a real richer flavor, you could use rosemary, you can use sage. Just, you know, keep in mind that this is going to add a wonderful aromatic to your soup. Now let's go back over and take a peek at our potato and our onions. Oh, and look at that, it's doing a beautiful job. And that butter just smells absolutely delicious. So my onions have really softened up. Now this is going to add a lot of wonderful flavor to my potatoes as well. And so I'm going to get ready now to add my other ingredients. Now I have here some water. Like I said to you, I am going to go ahead and use water instead of vegetable broth or chicken broth. And so I wanted to do that to show you, you know, not everybody has broth or stock handy. And so, yes, you can use water, but what's going to happen is now you're going to have to make sure that you taste this to help build flavor. And so that's why the onion is so important. That butter in there is so important. You can use regular or unsalted butter. Our herbs are going to be really important for adding flavor. And of course, at the end, you know, you want to use some salt and pepper. Now I'm heating up water here. We're going to add about 1.5 cups of water. And if it is a nice hot water, actually 2 cups of water, if it is a nice hot water, then that will make the cooking time that much less. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So we're going to add in our water to begin, and that's really going to help cook our potatoes. I'm going to raise my heat up. I just want this simmering. We're also going to add some milk to this and some heavy cream. I'm going to let this water come up to a simmer first, and then I'm going to add in my milk, and I am using whole milk just because I love that flavor that it's going to give, that wonderful fat in there. When we eat whole fat products like milk, yogurt, sour cream, cottage cheese, using the whole fat, those fats are actually, they're animal fats, and they're actually very good for us, and they help to satiate us so that we aren't looking for, they satisfy our hunger. We also need good fats for our brains, and our body needs those good fats. You know, where we get into trouble is when we eat a lot of carbohydrates and processed foods that have a lot of flours and sugars in them. That type of eating will in our bodies convert into body fat, and we have to be very careful about that. So, you know, keep your eye on that. Using some good healthy fats is a good idea. Okay, now I have, ladies, can you, are you seeing the soup? Okay, I thought my cameras may have gone off, but it seems to be
They
okay.
went back on, they were fine, they're fine. And
Excellent.
I do
Great.
have one question. Somebody asked if you can, do you use the tarragon, the sage, and the basil all together? Or would you?
I would use the tarragon and the basil because they have similar flavors. The sage is going to add a very different kind of rich flavor to it. So I would hold off. The sage is one of those, sage and rosemary are two herbs that are very dominant. I use them on their own, and they really make a nice statement that way. You could also add some lemon zest to this. So if you're using any one of these herbs, lemon zest at the end would really lift the soup, but especially for something like sage and rosemary, it would be really nice to use that. Now, this is my arugula that I pulled out of my garden. But you can also use, and I've got arugula here, and I'm going to add a little bit of, what did I do with my dandelion? I'm going to add a little bit of dandelion. I'm going to save some arugula for my salad, set that to the side. And here I'm going to cook with a little bit of the dandelion. So I have the arugula and the dandelion. The dandelion is going to add that real peppery flavor. All right, and we're going to chop those up. Let me just go back to our cooking, and oh, there we go. So we got a nice simmer going, and that's going to be cooking up our potatoes, softening those right up. I'm going to go ahead and add in my milk. Now, when you add your milk, you want to lower your temperature and make sure you're at a simmer. All right, and then go ahead, and we have a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. This is going to add another level of richness that I like, and add that in a little bit more of that really good fat that's going to help make this real kind of creamy in the end. And my goal right now is to cook this, I'm going to raise that up just a little bit, cook this to allow to cook up those potatoes. So now those flavors are all coming together. Now, my greens, to make this a little bit easier for me, I'm going to rough chop these up. Okay, and when we cook these, we're just going to cook them for, 3 minutes or so, just to really soften up the greens. But you do want to chop them up, especially if you're going to puree. That will help you in the pureeing later. Now I can smell these wonderful. Oh, they're so they smell so almost lemony to me, which is going to be a really nice thing, especially for a summer soup like this. Now, do remember that this soup can be served hot or cold. So if you've got this leftover on a hot day, just serve it cold. You're going to love that with a nice piece of bread with some really great butter. You're really going to love that. So we're going to get ready to add these in. You can check to see how your potatoes are doing. So I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to come over and I'm going to pierce the potatoes and then see, are they fork tender? So this one is still a little on the undercooked side. So it's still a little difficult to get through with a fork. You want them almost breaking up. So I'm going to go ahead and let that again cook for a few more minutes. I'm going to take my ingredients and take them over to the stove so that when they're ready to add in, they can be added in from here, including my salmon. So I've got about, a pound of salmon that I've cut up and I'm ready to use there. But now I want to share with you a salad recipe that I'm going to do for you. And so let's pull our greens together because some of these I did not have on the slide presentation. And I think you're going to, be interested in these. Some of you who are gardeners, you may be familiar with some of these. So this is one of my favorite. This is actually, we use this often in a window box. These are called Creeping Jenny. And this happens to be a golden color Creeping Jenny that I love. But you might have a green Creeping Jenny. And this again, very sweet and mild when you're using the younger. If it's been around all summer, it's going to get harder. So I like to go over to the plant and pick the new shoots that are coming out. So I'm going to break that up, and I've even got a few of the roots here. I'm going to take those off. And so this Creeping Jenny I foraged right out of my window boxes. We have our violet leaves here. Remember, I told you these are going to make a wonderful salad with those. I also have some of my dandelion. So I'm going to take the younger leaves. If you take the smaller leaves, they're more on the mild side. You may find dandelion at your grocery store. I recommend if it's the really tall, you've got the really big leaves of dandelion, those are great to saute up as a bitter green. So when you saute these bitter greens up, it helps them to be milder. So you might saute up some garlic and olive oil and then throw in your washed dandelion leaves. If you've gotten them and they're older, they'll be more bitter, and then this will take that bitterness out, just like you would a broccolini or a kale. If you saute that up, it will kind of help it to be the kale to be more mild. Now, this is a wonderful amaranth, and I have this growing. I planted one amaranth, and now I have all of these little seedlings. Amaranth, it comes in many different sizes, and there are many different types of amaranth. This one grows to be about 10 feet tall, but these are the little shoots, and they're just this gorgeous color. So these I'm going to use in my green salad. So this is my weed salad, right? So got those because they had to go. There were too many of them, and so I was happy to harvest them. So let's clear this off. So we've got all of our greens in there. Oh, and I had some arugula that I told you about that I harvested. Now I discovered recently that there is a perennial arugula along with an annual arugula that you plant by seed. And so I have both of those. These are my annual arugula. You do want to keep cutting them down and they'll grow back up. You don't want them to flower because then that will just get more and more bitter. All right, now I've let my soup go just a little bit. I didn't want to bring it to quite the roaring boil. And I'm just going to take, again, one of these potatoes out. See if I can grab myself a, there we go. Easy to get that. And again, I'm just checking this. This has another 2 to 3 minutes left, which means that I can go ahead and throw in my greens. All right, so they're going to finish up cooking together, and look at how beautiful that is. I'm also going to throw in my herbs, okay, so that they'll have a chance to cook up and become more aromatic. And as soon as those herbs hit that that broth, boy, did they really, their scent is absolutely stunning. I can smell them and they smell delicious. So we're going to let that come up to a simmer. So that's going to finish cooking the potato and then cooking our greens for that good 3 minutes to help take out any bitterness and to add their flavor to the dish. Now let's go ahead and continue on with our salad. So this is where we're going to have a lot of fun. So I did have, I've got some parsley from my garden. So I'm going to use some parsley and I just put the leaves in whole. You don't have to chop those up. Remember this little pineapple weed that I told you about? Well, I've got some of that. That's going to add some sweetness and that little chamomile flavor. So I'm going to add a couple of those up, and I did pull them. This came right out of the sidewalk, right where I was walking when I was walking home. So I just washed those off, dried them up, and add them. And oh my goodness, they have this wonderful chamomile scent to them. So in a salad, it's going to be wonderful. I also picked some fresh dill that I have growing. Dill weed is a weed for a reason, right? Once you get that established in your garden, it seems to pop up everywhere. And so I'm just going to chop that up. Now, if you want fewer weeds in your garden, you've got to get them before the weeds set out their flowers and then set out their seeds. So that's something to keep in mind. But I love dill all over the garden because it has a beautiful flower head. Now, this is from, and I'm going to share this with you. I have a bouquet here of some of my weeds. This, remember I told you about that, that wild mustard that is growing in my garden now on the edge. This is the one that's not invasive. And you can see the beautiful flowers here. So I'm just going to take some of these leaves. They're going to be added to my salad. I like the younger ones, not as sharp. So add those in. I might chop them up because if someone got a whole one, it might be a little bit on the sharp side. And then of course, these are the flowers from this plant. So I'm going to take those and just throw them in. And they're like, if you've ever let broccoli go to flower, it's beautiful. Just a big head of yellow flowers, has that wonderful sweet flavor. So we'll add a few of those in. And then, oh, we've got some chamomile flowers that I found. So I'm going to add those in. Why not? And then I'm going to, let's just put this over to the side, see what else we have. Okay, so chive flowers. We're going to go ahead and break this up and let those go right into the salad. So that's going to add a nice chive flavor to this. And I also wanted to share with you, I harvested some of my chive flowers and I added them to white vinegar. And so this is going to make a chive flower vinegar. So over time, over the next week or so, this is going to turn a bright pink color. And so it'll make a nice pink chive flavored vinegar. So that is going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time to do. And then I have bachelor buttons. These they self-sow. So I guess you could call them a weed. I didn't plant them. They came from last year's flowers. This, you know, the seeds got into the ground. So there you have it. I have, oh, I'm going to save these. Geranium flowers are edible, so I'm going to save those. I also have these little sweet alyssum flowers, so I'll decorate with those. They're very sweet and they are edible, of course. And then if you want, any rose is edible, so you could use, maybe we'll put a few rose petals in there. That's going to add a wonderful flavor to our salad. All right, now we'll just hold off on the rest of this until we're ready to use them. I do want to make for you a nice dressing. So here is our beautiful salad made with
Can I
our
just
meat.
interrupt one question? Someone in Q&A asked if you plant the amaranth from seed,
Amaranth?
or are they available in plants?
It depends on where you live and what they have. Oftentimes you'll see the amaranth available. Like I said, it comes in many different sizes. So planting them by seed is super easy. All of the amaranth that I have is from seeds that fell off the plant from the year before. So again, it's one of those things. Now that I've had amaranth in my garden, I will always have amaranth in the garden. So just keep, that in the back of your mind when you're planting some of these things. If you keep them in pots, then that's less likely to be an issue. I plant them right in my garden. Sometimes I set myself up for a lot of work later, but that's how I like to garden. So let's do, our soup is still simmering. I'm going to lower it down just a little bit again. And then once your potato is nice and soft, then it's time to go ahead and hit it with the immersion blender. I mentioned to you that today for me, I'm going to make that into a salmon soup, and I'm not going to puree it, just as a little thing so you can see how different it's going to be. So we'll do that in just a minute. Now I'm making my own dressing. So here we have, I'm trying to think, let me just go back. I need to look at this recipe to make sure I have the dressing recipe right. So this is the forager's soup. I'm going to share with you. Let me go here. Let's share my screen. And we have our foragers. This is the soup right here. If we go back, we're going to go back to the salad. And here the dressing. Now you can put any greens, as you've seen, any greens that you want. But for the dressing, we want to be using a vinegar. So I'm going to use this about 3/4 cup of olive oil. And then I'm going to be using a 1/4 cup of vinegar along with some Dijon mustard. So I just wanted to get those measurements right. So I've already measured my oil in there. Now this is a dandelion vinegar that I made, as I mentioned before. So I took apple cider vinegar and I steeped dandelions in the vinegar for a couple of weeks. And now I have this wonderful, and I'll have to say, there's vinegar, but I can smell honey on top of the vinegar. It's really quite delicious, actually, to smell that. And then here goes, I mix my Dijon mustard in into my vinegar, and then I pour that all into my bottle. If you mix your Dijon mustard into the vinegar, it makes it easier to then pour it into the bottle. You could certainly use a wide mouth jar with a lid if you want. I just love the ease of this. There's no whisking or anything. Just pour it all in. This is a very simple vinaigrette. And give it a shake, and we're all set. Now, if you prefer to have this on the sweeter side, you can use a white balsamic vinegar. You could use a dark balsamic vinegar, whatever you like. That will give it a sweeter finish. You could also add honey to this if you like, but we're going to stick with our vinaigrette. You can see how easy that was to mix up. Now I make a bunch of this and I just store it on my countertop, so I always have a salad dressing ready to go. I just want to go back over to the stove. Our potatoes are set. Our herbs have cooked up beautifully. And now it's time to add, I'm adding salmon. Again, I'm just going to poach that right in here. We're going to give it about 3 to 4 minutes with these salmon pieces cut up like this. They're going to add a wonderful flavor to this, and it's going to add a whole new dimension to this soup. So I'm just going to heat that up, and then that soup is going to be ready to go very soon. So let's go ahead and let's get a salad bowl so that we can mix our salad together. Guess what I'm having for lunch today? So I'm going to add this in just enough to flavor, to coat. Remember, once you dress this, you got to be ready to serve it. So we've got that. I am going to season this with salt and pepper, and I will do the same with my soup in just a minute. A little bit of salt. I like to use a nice kosher salt. You can use a sea salt if you like. Fresh cracked pepper. Perfect. And then let me get my tongs and give this a nice little toss. Such a beautiful salad. And all of this I gathered just from here in my garden. Took some of these things from my walk that I did earlier this morning. We'll go ahead and add that into our dish. I think I'm going to have to take a picture of this. And then I'll post this for everyone to see in the main part of my recipe page. All right, so we have all those beautiful colors and ingredients. Let's add some more flowers. So we're going to add this wonderful geranium, which looks really beautiful with that amaranth. Add that right in there. And maybe a couple of our sweet alyssum flowers. So there is our beautiful salad. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and finish. Let's go check our soup to see how that's coming out. Again, today I chose not to do the puree. If I wanted to, I could by removing the salmon once it's cooked and puree the soup. Maybe, why don't I do that just for the fun of it? And let's see how that puree comes out. Let's do that. So our salmon is beautifully poached. All right. And oh, I can smell that. Now we have this wonderful seafood. If you wanted to, you could also add, for example, chicken that has been cooked and shredded. If you had leftover pork, you could add that. If you wanted to make this strictly vegetable and you wanted to add cauliflower, you could cook the cauliflower in there with it. If you'd rather do cauliflower instead of potato, that would be wonderful. So a lot of possibilities are open to you. So let's pull out the last of our salmon. Make sure I've got all of that taken out. I've got one more piece hiding over here. Oh, there's another. Couple of potatoes can go back in. Potatoes are going to add that thickness. There we go. Okay. Oh well, if I missed a piece of salmon, that's okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take my immersion blender right over to the stove. This is what I love about the immersion blender, is that it's so convenient to use. And just by running that through, we're going to puree our soup, and then I'll add our salmon back in, and we can do continue poaching that if it's not cooked quite all the way. Let's turn this up. Just make sure with your immersion blender that you don't take those edges out of your soup, because then you'll have soup sprayed all over the kitchen, which I have done. So you don't want to do that. And look at how beautifully that comes together. A nice light green color. I can smell that tarragon, a little bit of basil in there. It's going to be beautiful with that salmon. Get the last of the potatoes, run that over. Notice I'm tipping my soup pot. That helps to bring all of that liquid down, makes that immersion action much easier. Okay, now we have that. And let's go ahead and add our salmon back in. Beautiful. Now it's time to serve that up. So let's bring that over to our cutting board, and we'll serve this up into a soup bowl. And you have this wonderful soft green color of the soup. Let's see. Oh, here's our soup bowl. All right, and we have our ladle. Now remember, this is what it's going to look like without your salmon, okay? And then I went ahead and poached the salmon in it, removed the salmon, pureed the soup. And now it's really a complete meal. This is lovely. And then we'll add some of our salmon pieces in there. And look at that. Now we have salmon soup and salad. And this salmon, the soup with the salmon in it, I could also serve this cold. Once the salmon is poached in the soup, you can serve it cold as well. So there we have our two dishes. Let's just decorate this one here. Maybe use a chive flower, which is beautiful. And let's add this, will brighten that up perfectly. So there we have both of our dishes all set to go. Very easy to do. Start looking around your garden. I think in your yard, you're going to start looking at things a little bit differently. If you have people who come and take care of your gardens, be sure to talk to them about the types of sprays or fertilizers that they may be using. It's possible that you'll want to start harvesting. Also, think about the kind of mulch that you use. If you're using mulch in your garden that is chemically colored, which most mulches are, you don't want to be harvesting from those gardens. So do check, for whoever is doing your mulching, what type of mulch they're using. Are there colorings to them? If that's the case, you don't want to be harvesting from them. Ladies, do we have any other questions before we go?
I just want to say, everybody was saying, thank you very much. It was fun. They hadn't really thought about some of the weeds that you mentioned. Some were concerned about some of them being very invasive. And one person asked about whether you could use horseradish flowers in your salad, which I think would be quite pungent, right? Yeah.
Yes, and I have some actually, but they're milder than you think because they need to attract a bee, right? So they're going to be a little bit on the sweeter side. So, but that would be a wonderful addition.
Anyway, that's it. Francis?
All right, so thank you, Liz, for this wonderful cook-along demonstration. These dishes look wonderful. I certainly learned a lot today about healthy edible weeds and how to use them. Today's cook-along demonstration is just one of the many upcoming virtual event offerings through AARP, and we hope you'll come back and join us for more. To learn about AARP New Hampshire's virtual offerings, including coffee and conversations, gentle yoga, educational webinars, and more cooking demonstrations, please visit www.aarp.org/nh. If you're interested in volunteering for AARP New Hampshire Community Team, contact us at nhaarp@aarp.org, and we'll put that in the chat link. The next cook-along demonstration with Liz will be on July 18th at 2 o'clock, and we'll focus on healthy summer fruits. Registration for this cook-along demo is on the AARP New Hampshire website, www.aarp.org/New Hampshire. So thanks for joining us today and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Liz. It was great.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. I'll hope to see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. See you tomorrow, Francis.
See you tomorrow, guys.
Yeah.
Everybody have a great one.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.